Hey everybody, welcome to One More Live. This is happening here on my English Instagram account, Tariana Rocha, everything together. And it's also happening in the Facebook group called Free and Empowered. So today we're going to talk about the top 4 mistakes I see people making when it comes to healing childhood narcissistic trauma abuse. All right. Before we get started, a heads up. We're starting the Inner Mastery Lab tomorrow, and this is a program that was created by someone who survived childhood narcissistic abuse. I'm also a psychoanalyst and a coach, and I've studied this specific issue, and I provide very specific healing tips, information, guidance for you if you're kind of at a loss with regards to what you're going to do with all this situation that you're dealing with, that you've probably just discovered about. So if you want to know more about this 10-week program that's going to help you understand childhood narcissistic abuse and also know what you have to do in practice to heal it, then click on the link in the description. And that's it, guys. We're starting this week. I'm super excited. I just love this program, and I love the people that I attract and that want to really work on themselves. So, all right, having said that, what are the top 4 mistakes that I see people making when they are healing from childhood narcissistic abuse? Well, the very first mistake is that people expect overnight changes. Now, think about it. Your entire life you've been living according to this false self, according to a fragment of your personality, because you've abandoned, rejected all of the other parts of you in order to be accepted by your toxic narcissistic parent, be it the mother, the father, or whoever was taking care of you, really, right? And so you've been living in this false self patterns for 20, 30, 40, 50. Think that if you read up on narcissism online and if you connect with some people, that it's going to be, something that you're easily gonna get over. And this creates a whole lot of frustration. There we go, I'm having a bit of a connection issue. So really you put yourself into this situation where it's really self-defeating. We have to understand that when we're talking about having had our personality formed by people who have personality disorders or who have serious mood disorders, this affects our mental health. It affects the way that we see ourselves, the way that we see life. And really, it's not going to happen overnight. And the sooner you adjust your expectations, the more kind you will be able to be with yourself. And this is really what's going to create that safe inner space that you want to create. So I want you to think about healing from childhood narcissistic abuse exactly like you would think about changing your lifestyle when it comes to your eating habits and when it comes to exercising. Let's say that you've always, had a really unhealthy lifestyle. You basically just ate any sort of crap that you wanted to eat. Maybe you even used food to regulate your moods, and you've never really been into physical exercise. Maybe you've even had all sorts of prejudice against it, thinking that it's a superficial, stupid thing to do. Now, if you want to change that and have a healthier lifestyle, it's not going to be just a matter of great, go to the gym a couple of weeks, eat some fruit and some veggies those next couple of weeks, and you're set. All of your toxic patterns and the way that you haven't been taking care of yourself for your entire life, well, that's just going to evaporate and go away. Not true at all. We really have to treat mental health in exactly the same way as we see the gym or self-care routines when it comes to our physical body. It's obvious that if you want to have a physically healthy lifestyle, then 2 weeks aren't going to cut it. You're going to have to really create new habits where you can get in that exercise 3 times a week, where you can really slowly change your unhealthy eating patterns, and you're going to have to keep up these new behaviors for the rest of your life. So that's the number 1 mistake that I see people making, and they think mental health is a matter of just understanding a few things and everything will fall into place. Not so. We really have to face healing from childhood narcissistic abuse as a lifelong process that involves you creating new habits that you are going to maintain, just like exercise, just like healthy eating, for the rest of your days. And if you can just wrap your mind around that, everything is going to flow more smoothly, because you're not going to be punishing yourself for being imperfect and for not healing fast enough. So that's the number one mistake that I see. The second huge mistake that I see is confusing intellectual understanding with healing, and this leading you to not really doing the inner work. So let's talk about what healing actually looks like for people who suffered trauma, abuse, neglect, or even overprotection, okay? This is a type of neglect for a number of years, particularly people who suffered these sorts of things for a number of years when they were children, when their personality was being formed. So generally what happened with you if you were raised by parents who are pathological narcissists is that you needed to always be attuned to their behavior in order not to be punished, or in order to avoid some sort of huge, outburst or something like that. So basically what this means is that as children of narcissists, we learn to walk on eggshells. And physiologically speaking, what this means is that your nervous system was actually calibrated from a very young age to overreact, to be oversensitive, because if you're in a dangerous environment, your body is going to want to always be on alert in order to really catch those potentially dangerous situations, so as to protect you from them. Now, when you grew up in an environment like that, your nervous system is all wrong. And this is where it gets interesting. Trauma is generally understood as a psychological phenomenon. And really it's not. That's just one tiny aspect of it. Trauma, particularly when it comes from having been raised in a traumatic environment, has everything to do with the body. It's a physiological condition, which in our case leaves us with a very erratic, very hyperactive, very oversensitive, hard to control nervous system. So what does this mean? You know, it's one thing for you to study about narcissism and for you to study about healing, and then you have that intellectual understanding. And for many of us, we're going to want to keep that understanding at an intellectual level in order to avoid feeling the pain behind it. And then we're like, oh, damn, if I've studied so much, I could start my own YouTube channel on this subject. I know everything there is to know about this subject. Great. But what you haven't done? You haven't dealt with the physiological issue of having been walking on eggshells for decades, and how this creates a physical situation in your body where you feel danger and you can't pinpoint why you feel danger. So the second huge mistake I see people making is doing the intellectual work but not doing the inner work. The inner work has got to do with actually setting apart time to deal with your triggers, to deal with your very repetitive defense mechanisms that you've been relying on for your entire life, that you've built your entire personality and sense of identity around, right? It involves you pausing and you actually sitting with your emotions. You getting in touch with those difficult emotions, asking yourself questions about what's going on inside you, and being able to get to a place where you are connected with self enough so that when you feel those wounded parts inside you, you're not taken over by them, and then all you can feel is your pain. Until you get to a point with your inner work where you know how to, in a practical, physical sense, calm down your nervous system. And you can do this through breathing techniques, you can do this through yoga, you can do this through meditation, you can do this through all sorts of different techniques that are body based, okay, and that involve you actually being able to calm yourself down physically, until you get to a point where you're connected enough with self that you're calm and grounded, and you can look at your wounded parts from the seat of self, from that grounded place. Then really you're not ever going to get over the physiological reality of walking on eggshells and just feeling danger all the time and feeling anxious all the time and not knowing why. So I'm going to give you a few examples of how this happens. So we're talking about that workaholic who is a go-getter, a high achiever, and they've got all the intellectual understanding on narcissism, they've done the work, they've done the research, but they don't actually sit down with their wounded little inner girl in order to talk to her and to console her and receive her pain and deal with all of that in a way that all of that should have been dealt with by an adult when that person was a kid. And if you're not going to do that for yourself, actually sit down with your emotions and be patient with them, and understand your own pain, feel the sort of compassion that you feel towards other people, towards yourself for once, then you're not going to get the benefit of actually physically, in a very practical sense, being able to calm yourself down when you're triggered. We're talking about that person that has borderline traits, and as soon as they come in touch with some sort of heavy emotion, instead of sitting down and doing some parts work or using whatever sort of technique you use to deal with emotional regulation, what do? They go out and they try to connect with someone else or throw their heavy emotions onto someone else because they're not used to being by themselves. They kind of outsource their heavy emotions, and so they avoid doing the inner work because they're always looking for someone to save them. We're talking about the skeptic who maybe even has a whole lot of intellectual information, but they're at a point where they're like, you know what, this isn't gonna work, so I'm not going to do it. So they read about everything that there is to read about, but they don't sit and do it because there's part of them that's like, this is dumb, it's not going to work, I'm not going to do it. Well, if you don't do it, particularly in the way that I said, where you have to do it for the rest of your life and it has to become a new lifestyle where you take care of yourself, obviously it's not going to work. In exactly the same way that if you go to the gym once and eat a salad for lunch and that's like literally all you do the whole year for your health, obviously that's not going to work either. We're also talking about that person with codependent traits that will not sit with their inner world. Oh, but they sure as heck will distract themselves with someone else's inner pain, right? So they're going to find someone for them to save, someone for them to rescue, so they don't have to actually rescue themselves in the middle of that emotionally charged moments where they find someone else to whose pain can distract them from their own. We're also talking about that person that has little healthy narcissism. Yeah, guys, so there's something called healthy narcissism. And when we don't have enough of it, we have this mentality that everybody deserves love. Everybody deserves attention. Everybody deserves to have their needs met except for me. So I have lots of clients who have children, for example, and really they don't do anything for themselves. You can see that there's a lack of healthy narcissism where they're not really capable of receiving basic care for their own basic needs. Oh, but they give everybody else, this care. Their kids certainly deserve this loving. Their kids deserve patience and compassion, but they don't deserve anything. So we're talking about that person as well. Oh, they're so giving when it comes to everybody else. But goddamn, you know what? My wounded inner child, she deserves nothing. Why isn't she perfect already? Why isn't she healed already? God, I'm so inferior, right? We're also talking about the quick fixer sort of mentality. People who use eating, shopping, going to the salon, having sex, or anything else in a compulsive fashion in order to distract themselves from the inner pain. So that person, when they're triggered, or when they feel that inner void, or when they feel that anxiety, or when they feel their body reacting to things in a way that they can't understand in a rational sense, using their rational mind, what do? They distract themselves. They go smoke some pot. They go have sex with the first person that shows up. They go eat an entire pizza by themselves. So you see, there's all of these different responses to our inner pain that prevent us from actually sitting the heck down and daily people, often various times a day, getting in touch with our inner wounded parts and doing the work using whatever sort of technique that you want to use. You know what I mean? So long as you don't learn how to quite simply calm your nervous system down wherever you're at. If you're out in public, or if you're at home, or if you're with friends, then you really don't have an internal tool to feel safe. So it doesn't really matter how much intellectualizing you do, or however much you study, you don't know what to do with your heavy emotions when they arise. So the third really sad situation that I see that gets in the way of people being able to heal from childhood narcissistic abuse is accepting the personality that your narcissistic parent created for you based on their pain, based on their projection, based on their hidden need that you not become an autonomous, fully functional adult. So through gaslighting, through neglect, through abuse, through being ignored, through so many different sorts of behavior, narcissists kind of have us take on this personality where we let go of the parts of us that made us human, that made us vibrant, that made us feel like, we are solid inside, that there is a solid sense of self. And this can happen to the scapegoat who eventually internalized that identity of always being a loser, right? So your mother told you their whole life, you're a loser, you're a loser, you're a loser, you're a loser. And you've identified with that. Obviously, that's the problem with being raised by abusive parents. They tell us who we are, and we identify with what they tell us. And it doesn't cross our mind, wait a second, this person was invested in my not becoming a fully functional, happy, autonomous adult. So everything they told me about myself was actually based on that ulterior motive and on their pain. Why the heck would I accept their interpretation of me? But it also goes for the golden child who was applauded whenever they made their parent look good. And now the golden child is well into her or his 40s, 50s, 60s, and they have this entire personality based entirely on how much they can produce, on how good they are at things. And they do not derive a sense of self from anything else. So, your mom just validated that your ability to achieve, and you have over-identified with that aspect of your personality to the detriment of all of these other parts of you that need your attention, right? This is also true for those people who were their mother's or father's psychologist. If you spent your entire childhood and teens basically not having a personal existence because it was your role to just sit in front of your narc parent and just be like, oh my God, your pain is so great. Oh my God, I understand why you feel such pain and you act the way you do. Yeah, you're totally right in having these reactions and these difficulties because your pain really is the biggest pain ever. So what do? You develop this whole personality that is based on the fact that the only way you got attention as a child was by being someone's therapist and taking other people's pain. And then you find that your relationships are based around you having to save someone or you having to be someone's free therapist. So regardless of what the identity that your narc parent created for you, there needs to be distance between this new sense of self that we are building that is based on our actual needs that we're slowly getting in touch with. It's based on our actual preferences that we might not even know what they are. And it's a process as you unidentify, you let go of having to be that one identity that your narc parent said that you needed to be. And also, I see that the fourth greatest problem when it comes to healing from childhood narcissistic abuse is confusing inner work with creating an outer life. Okay, so what does this mean? The first thing I said that is a huge problem, or was it the second thing? The second thing I said was that people confuse the intellectual work with the inner work. So they confuse understanding things in a rational sense with actually having the courage and the time to sit with their emotions, the heavy ones, and specifically to sit with the heavy emotions as they are also in the seat of self. Because it's one thing for you to sit with heavy emotions and be overtaken by them and be like, oh my God, this is too much. I really am shit. I'm really useless. I'm really worthless. you're not really seeing that wounded part from a space, a grounded space of self, but to specifically look at that wounded part from the most sacred, the wisest, the most loving, the most compassionate space that you have inside of you. This part is able to be a witness to that pain that has been hidden inside of your psyche for decades and has not been seen. That's one mistake. But here I'm talking about another mistake. Let's say that you do the inner work. And you do sit with your pain, and you can sit with your pain and not get identified with it. You sit with it from a grounded space of self, because from that space, you don't look at your pain and just judge it. That's just perpetuating your perfectionism. From a space of self, you look at your pain and you feel compassion. And you can actually feel some appreciation even for parts of you that have been struggling for so long to try to keep your head above water, even if they've been doing it in very childish ways due to defense mechanisms. When you're from self, when you're in the seat of self, you look at your pain with love and you transmute it. So what I'm talking about here is not actually doing the inner work. I'm talking about creating a new outer life. So what do I mean by this? Guys, think about it. If you've been living within a false self, if you've been investing in this identity that your mom or your dad said that you needed to be, this means that all of your life and all of your relationships and all of your choices were based on this false self-interpretation of what is right and wrong. So this means that there might be a lot of situations and a lot of areas in your life that are not aligned with your true self. So it's one thing for you to understand things intellectually. It's another thing altogether for you to sit down with your pain every single damn day and look at them from a space of compassion. And it's another thing altogether to actually change the physical material situation of your life. So think about it. When I discovered about my narcissistic my pathological narcissistic mother, many years ago, 10 years ago, I was smack dab in the middle of a bunch of really unhealthy situations. All of my friends were toxic. All of them were toxic. All of them stole from me, lied from me, treated me like crap, and I wasn't able to identify it. I didn't know. I was used to it. I thought it was normal. I didn't like my job, right? The way that I related to my body and to eating and to that was very different from what I do nowadays. And so basically, when I looked around, all of the situations were wrong. In order for me to create a life that actually demonstrates what I want to be, not what my mother authorized me to be, then I need to start changing those relationships. And this involved a process of years where I said goodbye to toxic relationships, and I slowly met new people that I formed new relationships with. Healthy relationships. This took years from the moment where I was like, well, damn, I have this job that is not really what I want to do. And I was able to create a business online and actually transition from what was not really me or fully me to what I want to do, you know? So it takes time. It's not just about going to the therapist. It's not even just about doing the inner work. It's about slowly taking the courageous steps to let go of those toxic relationships and taking the courageous steps to expose yourself socially, and that might be a trigger for you so that you can welcome in healthier relationships. It's about taking the courageous steps of like sending in your letter saying that you're resigning from your job because you can see that that is not the right job for you. And now that you're more in touch with your true self, you can actually send out resumes for something else. So you can see how there is this inner work that we have to do, which is not just intellectual understanding. It's actually feeling our wounded parts from a place of self, where we can see them with compassion and not self-hate. It's also about slowly removing the toxic patterns and situations from our life and substituting them with beautiful, healthy new patterns and healthy new situations. So guys and gals, this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about. We are starting the Inner Mastery Lab tomorrow. If you feel called to this, if you feel that this is a moment where you're ready to do the inner work, you're ready to really sit with those parts and finally transform something in the way of how you feel, how safe you feel inside your own skin. This is the focus of the Inner Mastery Lab. It's teaching you practical tools for you to actually create a sense of inner safety, regardless of having felt like you're walking on eggshells your whole life, or like you have to be this identity that isn't even yours. If you feel called to this but you're not sure, send me an email or send me a message. We can schedule a free 20-minute alignment call just to see if it's a good fit for you. Pressure free, okay? I just want to work with you if you want to work with me. So I'm not into pressuring people. And that's it, guys. We're starting this week. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've identified with anything that I said here in the video. Let me know in the comments below. Tell me what your questions are. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe, and then also, what do they say? You have to like click on the little bell signal as well, so that you actually receive notifications about when there's a new video out. We're going to be making lots of new videos on this subject and other subjects related to this. And that's all. So y'all have a wonderful week. And see you next time.